There used to be a saying that you really get to know somebody by watching how they react when they're under pressure. And you see that in some of these landlords. Like we went to see a place just a month ago where they had you go through this laborious application process where it didn't seem to matter that you were the first guy there. I mean, I'm very diligent. We showed up, we were the first ones there. We were the first ones to submit the application. We were ready for them. We did everything just like that. Everything clicked, boom, 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 boom. Only to be told, well, we're going to allow applicants for 3 days so that we can see through all of the applications. What does this sound like? Doesn't it sound like employment? Yeah, we're in our new luxury apartment. The price is luxury. I mean, we did spend quite a few years in one spot, like in Ecuador, in Cuenca, Ecuador. We were in the same house for 5 years, which, you know, there is a benefit to that. It gives you an opportunity to get familiar with the people in the area, neighborhoods, and forge relationships, you know, which is what we're also doing now here in this apartment. I mean, it just seems like something that counter what most people do. You know, like normally you go out and you look at a place and you want the best one that you like the most. But what it really comes down to is what we found is that you have to actually pay attention to the people you're dealing with, the landlords, the relationship. Choosing the right landlord. And I've talked in other videos about tip of the iceberg techniques and just ways of studying people and understanding what kind of a person you're dealing with, and just being cautious and diligent about the relationship that you have with the people that you need to be interacting with, such as landlords. It's more important to choose the type of person that is going to be your landlord than it is the type of property that you're renting. I mean, clearly if you have a choice of, different properties, great. But if you have to make a choice between, oh, this property's nicer and better, but the landlord's like this, but this property's not as good as that one, but the landlord is the type of landlord you should have, you should always choose the landlord. And that's the beginning of your friendly relations with the local. And, it's the iceberg principle, where tip of the iceberg principle says that when you see something, that's usually the tip of the iceberg, and, there's a whole lot more. Now, it could be good, it can be bad, depending on what you're seeing. And you generally, you can tell, I mean, people's demeanor and how they treat you. Like, for example, we went to one place. I've talked about how different rental markets or real estate markets are being affected, or different locations are being affected during this displacement that's going on because of the political upheaval. That's what I call it. That's exactly what it is. People, when you look at some of these headlines now, they're being prohibited just from leaving Canada. And I don't know if that's going to make it a little easier in some of the places where a lot of the Canadians were going. But anyway, you're just fighting the crowds, and that's just something that I normally don't do. It's like my whole life I've avoided crowds, right? Even like when we were in the States, and we did a lot of things that frugal preppers do. And so one of the things that does is it liberates you in your time and your schedule, so that you can, being a prepper and also making your own work, so that you're not relying on an employer, which a lot of folks in the retire lifestyle anyway, or just the liberty, freedom lifestyle, have figured out. And I'll tell you, that's really making a big difference now. You see how politically things change, and all of a sudden, wow, this makes way more sense than it ever has before. And of course for us, it always has made sense all our lives. But it's making even more sense for everyone else now because of what's happening with their employment and them being forced out because they don't want to be trespassed on. And so I've always avoided crowds. I've never had to fight crowds. And so little things like, what time of day to go to the store and go shopping. I mean, historically people have always gone like after their work, 9 to 5, well, 6, 7 p.m., that's the worst time to go shopping. Of course, I never went at that hour. I always went when people were driving to work, or when they were at work and when the crowds were super low. So I always had every place I went to myself. And this is the complete opposite when you come to these places. You've got a mad rushes going on. Certain spots in Mexico are getting this mad rush mentality. And that does affect how people interact with one another. Like when you're talking to landlords, if they're getting a dozen applicants the first day, and the second day another dozen, their attitudes start changing. And I think that it looks like to me that there used to be a saying that you really get to know somebody by watching how they react when they're under pressure. And you see that in some of these landlords. Like we went to see a place just a month ago where they had you go through this laborious application process where it didn't seem to matter that you were the first guy there. I mean, you showed up. I mean, I'm very diligent. We showed up. We were the first ones there. We were the first ones there. We were the first ones to submit the application. We were ready for them. We did everything just like that. Everything clicked, boom, 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 boom. Only to be told, well, we're going to allow applicants for 3 days so that we can see through all of the applications. What does this sound like? Doesn't it sound like employment? All this is just barriers. They're just barriers because this is how they filter and take the ones that they want, and they cherry pick. And cherry picking could also mean discrimination. If you don't want a certain kind of person or a certain this or that, you can just blame it on the application process. On the other hand, the other side of that is this, that you can also see the best or the worst in people when they act the way they act in these kinds of environments. And you can figure out that, well, we don't want anything to do with people that do this, because they're just playing a game. And Angie just reminded me that one place we went to, and they were all of them like acting to a degree like that. And some of these places where you've got so much pressure of people, foreigners coming in, and that apartment where they were they're all putting up the barriers, but this particular one where we were the first ones, we drove by there 2 weeks later, they still haven't put a renter in it. So what's going on with these people? It's like, what kind of a game are they playing? And then they're taking everybody's documents and they're asking for all this personal information and stuff, and you feel normally you would just blow them off, but it's like there's so much demand and you feel like, gosh, we're never going to get an apartment here, and you feel like you have to comply to a certain level. But you know what? There's a line in the sand there where a person has to say, they have to be true to themselves and say, look, there is a line in the sand that I won't cross. There is a right and wrong. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to become beholden to another person to such an extent that it's demoralizing, and it destroys your privacy, and it just tilts the relationship to I use terminology sometimes that maybe some people think is extreme, but it literally does put people at just a ridiculous disadvantage, to where it's just, people lording it over other people, landlord lording it, and everything is just stacked against you, and it's all for them and none for you, And if you say anything, oh, goodbye, I got 2 dozen other applicants. A really, really treacherous situation with the rental market in some of these places. You may think that it sounds like the thing to do. Oh, hey, people are doing this, they're going over here. But when but you've got to stay true to the things that we've been talking about here forever. And it's a good thing that we did. I mean, we've turned our back on so many deals just because they're just ridiculous. And then when we met this landlord, like I said, the rapport, just everything clicked right away, beginning with the lack of fear, and as everything progressed to where we cemented the relationship, they seemed to be willing to have us. It's like you can tell when they want you and when they don't. It's like they wanted us, and we were able to have a win-win agreement where it wasn't 100 for them and 0 for us. It was more like a 50-50, a win-win deal. So real happy about that. So, but we got into the apartment, and one of the first thing I asked them is, because as you know, we like to cook pizza. But one of the first thing I asked them is, does the oven work? You'd be surprised how many places, and it's because they throw in used appliances. And so when they throw in used appliances, because the place we were at before this one, it was the same thing. The oven didn't work. So we have been having to suffer for 2 months without the ability to bake pizza. That's harsh. And because we make our own, and it's way better than going out. Even the landlord here said so. She said, yeah, there's pizza places, but they're not that good. So we've been 2 months without an oven, and so that's the first thing I asked the landlord was, does the oven work? And she said yes, and then we signed the contract and gave the deposit. And lo and behold, it turns out the oven doesn't work. And how people act, and it's like she was so kind. Let me show you what she did. She's trying to get a hold of the repair guy, and apparently he's on vacation for like 5 more days. And so she brings over this portable oven here. And this is not a toaster oven. This is literally a small portable oven. It's got the oven settings on it, and she even brought a pizza pan that actually fits in here. This is actually quite deep. I don't know if you can see it, all the way almost up to my elbow, goes all the way in there. So a whole pizza pan will fit in there, which is pretty amazing. So she's been very accommodating, and she's been very kind. She's responding to the way I see it. She's responding properly and appropriately and being concerned, because she knows, and she said, and I didn't rub it in. I didn't say, well, I asked you about the oven before you did anything. She did say, well, yeah, we bought the thing and they told us that the oven worked. And so, but she was so kind about it. She brought the oven over right away, and they're just really nice people. And so that, to me, it's like an accomplishment to me. It's an accomplishment that we actually ended up with somebody that we want to be dealing with, because this is the kind of people we want to be dealing with, that make things right and do what's right, and make good on what they know, that keep things peaceful and keep things flowing and keep things good. You got a situation where you're renting, and it's not really what we want to be doing. What we want to be doing, and it sounds sort of the opposite of what a lot of people are trying to do, is flee. But since we're already abroad, everything is so up in the air. You don't know from 1 week to the next what's going to happen. And so preparedness is always on our mind. And so we're doing what we can to forge relationships and get at least somewhat set up to weather some kind of any kind of dislocation or disruption that may come our way. So a lot of things to consider, and we're just glad that we chose, because the landlords chose us, but we also chose the landlord. There was instant rapport with this landlord. You can tell with some people, they get out of their car and they're not afraid. There's no fear, and she comes up to you and she's not afraid. And whereas a lot of the other people, you got to get all covered up, because we're afraid and living in fear. And it's not irresponsible, because we are doing things to keep ourselves healthy. So anyway, thanks for coming to our channel, and have a nice day.